Well, I don't do a lot of lawn mowing. That ain't my sort of thing, but I do have a lawnmower. But normally, you know, I figure the horses take care of the grass, and that's good enough, and the weeds are too much for a mower anyway. But I do have this lawnmower that used to be my ma's, and I keep it running, but I did have a small disaster last year. I'm just getting around to fixing it now. But these, you know, they got a housing here and bearings and the shaft that runs through, and one of the bearings went out. So I'm going to replace all the bearings, you know, as long as I got it apart, because, you know, they're difficult to work on, just a little irritating. You know, they're not, they're put together kind of in odd ways always. But this is pretty straightforward. But the bearings were really out. And then sitting, it rusted in there even worse, but I got it all apart. But there's where that little DeWalt impact is just the handiest tool around. You know, I don't, it's hard to work on things without something like that. And a big brass hammer. But like I say, I got them out, and I got one of them in one piece. So I'll go, it's actually two different bearings, a bigger one on top. But I can go into bearing supply and get the right bearings. So I'll make sure and replace them all as long as I'm in here. But the one thing I was going to mention that it's got nothing to do with mowers, but about like a month or so ago, you know, my driver's license had to be renewed. So I go in to renew it, and you have to take the eye test and all that. And they, of course, now have it modernized. You know, it used to be you just walked up to the counter. Well, now you've got to sign in on a computer, which is awkward for a lot of people. You know, not everybody's up on that stuff. So I figured it out, and I did mine. And then I stood there and did about 10 other people, you know, helped them to get it so they, because, you know, it's got all the options of the Spanish and all that nonsense. So a lot of people struggle with it. But, you know, I figured it out, so I helped them. But then when it come time, they called my name, and I went up there, and, you know, they took the picture. You know, first they had to do the eye test thing and all that, then, which, you know, fine, I can live with that. But then, when it come time to take the picture, they did something that I hadn't run into before, because she wanted me to take off my glasses for the picture. And I thought, this is odd, because I've never had to do that before. You know, I've always had my glasses on in the picture. You know, because the idea originally, these pictures are supposed to look like you. They're not, you know, they're, and if you're wearing glasses all the time, they should probably have the glasses on the picture. I know there was a big squawk, some other state, maybe it was California, some transgender, you know, it was a male who came in to have the picture taken, but he came in wearing makeup to take this picture, but they made him take off all this makeup to have his picture taken. And I think there was a lawsuit, you know, a big squawk about this stuff. Anytime that stuff gets involved, it gets to be news, which is why I heard it. But I thought, well, that's, you know, interesting, and I asked her, well, why without the glasses? You know, and she said, well, it's to do with the facial recognition software. Now, why they, you know, the highway department, like a highway patrol doesn't stop you and scan you and run this facial recognition stuff to make sure it's you. You know, it just seemed kind of odd, you know, that they're, so now they've got a database of all the information for the facial recognition stuff for everybody in the state who has a driver's license, and I'm sure it's that way in every state, you know, because we're usually behind on that stuff. To me, that's a little annoying. You know, and it just kind of perked me up a little bit when she said that, because I can see no legitimate need for them to have that. You know, but it's always, oh, you know, if they're going to track a bomber and then they can scan the crowd. But I don't like the idea that they can scan the crowds, you know, going into a stadium, this sort of nonsense. But at the same time, there's a lot of companies that are trying to get into this facial recognition stuff so that, say, if you walk into a store, they know who you are and they can kind of point their advertising and their product line toward you. You know, it's, you know how they're just trying to, always struggling to get this stuff. What worries me now is that the state has all this data. They have everything that these companies want, all of your information. And the state is not above selling this stuff. They've done that in the past. You know, if you register an antique vehicle, suddenly you will be getting catalogs from these companies who sell parts for antique vehicles. And this isn't just them, I mean, it's everybody. But the state does sell your information. And I suppose you have to opt out of it and all this, you know, if you know to do that. You know, and the NRA does the exact same thing. Every time I buy, like, a hunting license, or if I buy a new firearm, somehow the NRA knows about it, and they'll send me that application, you know, trying to get me to sign up for this. And then, of course, you get the Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited. This all comes, you know, it's all tied, but it all goes back to filling out some government form. So they aren't above selling your information. So it annoys me that they've got this whole database of the facial recognition stuff. That, like I say, they aren't above selling. So we'll see. You know, and you always, when that comes up, you always think, oh, that's like science fiction. They would never do that. But it's been shown in the past that if they can do it, they'll do it. You know, until somebody stops them. And then they'll say, oh, well, you should have told us you didn't want us to do this. Well, nobody wants you to invade their privacy like that. But they are certainly not above it. Right, Jake? Your privacy is secure. Just annoyed me. Things like that, when they come up, they just kind of, all of a sudden, perk me a little bit. Like, why is this? Because it really makes no sense. But the excuse that I'm sure they're using is for national security. But it'll go way beyond that, like these things always do. You know, I'd be curious if other people have noticed that same thing. Or if that alarms them at all. Or I guess maybe people are just used to it and just kind of say, well, you know, but your options are pretty limited there. If you got a full driver's license, all of them come with photos on them now. And all your information is in their files, and they look anywhere to make a couple of bucks off your information. So I do not put it past them. So if you walk into a store and the store starts talking to you by name, you know why. But they cannot be trusted. Nobody can be trusted anymore. Everybody's out to make a buck.